I got a another question for you, Rabbi Asher. So
Yeah.
whenever you say Netilat Yadayim, is it proper to say it before or after?
So I teach that you're supposed to say it before. However,
Okay.
surprisingly, Rabbi David Bar Chaim, which I thought would also teach like that, actually teaches that you say it afterwards, but for different reasons.
Right.
The halacha stands as it appears in Mishnah Torah that any bracha said after the fact is a bracha levatala. Like it's a blessing said in vain.
Right.
However, there's also a law that you're not supposed to make brachot with dirty hands. If you take that into consideration, then you're making a bracha afterwards because your hands happen to be dirty. Netilat Yadayim really doesn't have anything to do with washing your hands. And what's the blessing in English?
Isn't it like blessed are you, Lord of the universe, who has commanded us to wash your hands?
It's lift. It's lift your hands.
Right, correct. So in Hebrew, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher l'shanu sta v'tiyanu al netilat yadayim means to elevate your hands. It has nothing to do with washing your hands. So that's something that's lost in the English. I think that they're both right. Okay, but at least according to the Rambam, in my opinion, it's to be done before. Yemenites do it before, but it's true. There's a law not to say a bracha with dirty hands. The question is, what constitutes as dirty? I mean, if your hands are already clean, what are you going to do? I mean, say the bracha before sometimes and later afterwards. So what I've seen people do is just first wash their hands in general as a separate action apart from Netilat Yadayim, and then do the Netilah. So that's the answer. They're both right.
They're both right. Okay.
Actually, this is understood as a principle in Judaism. The notion that anything or any bracha that's said before is considered bracha levatala, to the point that they'll tell you that yes, we understand that, but the bracha we're making is for the drying. Now, I think this is a contemporary idea that many people think is ancient. Now, it's true. The drying is just as part of the action as the washing. But it's just interesting that they make that justification.
All right, next, come on.
I got a wacky one for you, since no one else is responding, or maybe just thinking about one.
Let's go.
Do you give much credence to? I've never seen you do a video about this, probably because it's irrelevant. But do you give much credence to the whole like Paleo Hebrew, and how that might have been lost in translation, with the Jews adopting like the Rashi script, or not the Rashi script, but the Ashuri script?
Right, with the Assyrian text. What's called Paleo Hebrew nowadays, the Phoenician script, looks very similar. If you compare it to the script of other societies that lived in that region, it's very similar. I don't think it makes it any more holy or less holy. I heard someone online say that because they changed the script to Assyrian script to Ashuri script, that means that they changed the Torah in some way. No, all they did was replace one letter for another letter. They didn't rewrite the whole Torah. It's not a Targum. So it doesn't really matter. There's an argument in the Talmud like this. If the Luchos were given in Phoenician script or in the Babylonian script, and there's two different opinions. Clearly, the understanding is that it was in the older script. They found an amulet that has the Birkat Kohanim on it, and it has the Paleo Hebrew, this and that. It's not even an argument. It appears in coins that they found in Eretz Israel. But I don't think it has any religious significance to it. I tend to agree with the Rambam in this area. He says the only thing that makes Hebrew holy, and he's really just quoting the Talmud here, is that Hebrew is the only language that doesn't have bad words in it intrinsically. And we see this nowadays. In Israel, Israelis, if they want to curse you out, the bad words are in Arabic. They're not in Hebrew. I mean, outside of like words that aren't necessarily bad, like Ben Zonah or Lech le'azazel, go to hell. I mean, it's kind of like a biblical word that they attached a bad meaning to it, but supposedly that there's no intrinsically bad word in Hebrew, and that's what makes the language holy, not that it's intrinsically holy.
Interesting. So the Samaritans continue to use that script. Is that like kind of their shtick? Like they just decided to stick with it? But it doesn't make it any less authentic.
Right.
Right.
I don't know much about the history of the Samaritans outside of what appears in the Talmud and Josephus. I'm saying this because they happen to have a different narrative of their history.
Not to mention Tanakh itself. I mean, Tanakh mentions the story of the Samaritans that we know of today. Now, it's not complete. This is where the Talmud and Josephus step in. But yeah, no, they claim to have a pedigree going back to Aaron Cohen. They claim to be Kohanim.
According to the Talmudic understanding, and I think any Jewish source endorsed by rabbis, is that they were basically pagans that were placed there by Sanherib, who was the king and general of the Assyrian army when they exiled the 10 northern tribes, because what they would do whenever they would invade a country, they would transplant people from other countries they invaded in order to avoid mutiny. They transplanted these people, these pagans, and according to the story, because they were practicing Avodah Zarah in the land, there were lions in the land of Israel back then, they started eating them. So they went to the Jewish people and they said, why are the lions eating us? And they're like, because you're practicing idolatry in the land. So they converted to Judaism. But it wasn't a sincere conversion. They reverted back to their old ways. And this is why they were considered the converts of lions, or because of lions. We know them as transplants from Assyria or from the Assyrian Empire.
It's interesting how they still consider themselves like Bnei Israel. Like they don't call themselves Jews, but like actual Israelites.
It's split in the Talmud.
They would use.
Some rabbis consider them Jewish and others don't. For example, the Shulchan Aruch, one word they use as synonymous with Gentile is the word kuti. So kuti is the word Kuthian. So Kuthian is another word for Samaritan. It says that someone who's Mechalel Shabbat, or it says that he's Kekuti, that he's like a Samaritan, which means that he's like a Gentile according to the Talmud or the Machaber understands of what a Gentile is.